Some jokes just don't land. But for these 20 comedians, their jokes crash-landed and burst into flames. They angered fans, got fired by major networks, and some were banned from entire countries. We're counting down the stars who almost got canceled. And you will not believe the comedian who lied about 9/11 for over a decade. 1. Gilbert Gottfried. For decades, Gilbert Gottfried was one of the most recognizable voices in show business. You see, he was the loud, obnoxious, and squinting comedian who seemed to be everywhere. But his biggest and most steady paycheck came from a place you would not expect. He was the voice of the Aflac duck in those famous insurance commercials. It was a huge, family-friendly gig. But here's the kicker. Gilbert's style of comedy was the total opposite of family-friendly. He loved dark jokes. And in 2011, just moments after a terrible earthquake and tsunami hit Japan, he went on Twitter. He posted a series of jokes about the disaster. To put it mildly, people were horrified. The jokes were seen as cold and heartless, making fun of a tragedy where thousands of people were suffering. The backlash was instant. Aflac, which does a huge amount of business in Japan, was flooded with complaints. They couldn't be associated with him. Believe it or not, Gilbert Gottfried was fired from his job by a duck. He lost his biggest paycheck in the span of a few hours. He apologized, but the damage was done. For a while, it looked like his career was over. He eventually bounced back, becoming a beloved guest on podcasts and leaning into his reputation as a comedian's comedian who would say anything. Gilbert's jokes were posted for the whole world to see. But our next comedian's problems were a huge, damaging secret that toppled an entire empire when they finally came out. 2. Louis C.K. For a time, Louis C.K. was more than a comedian. He was a king. He had one of the most celebrated TV shows, called Louis. He sold out huge arenas like Madison Square Garden by himself, and he was known for his smart, sad dad style of comedy. He was at the absolute top of the mountain. Then, in 2017, a huge story broke in the New York Times. Several female comedians came forward and accused Louis of serious misconduct. They said he had behaved in a very inappropriate way around them. What many overlooked was that these rumors had been floating around for years, but he had always denied them. This time, it was different. The thing nobody tells you is how fast a star can fall. Within 24 hours of the story, Louis C.K. admitted that all the stories were true. The fallout was total. FX, the network for his show, dropped him completely. HBO erased all of his old specials from their service. A movie he had just finished, called I Love You, Daddy, was canceled and never released. He lost millions. His career was not just on ice, it was frozen solid. He disappeared for a whole year. Slowly, he started doing small club shows. Then he started self-releasing his own specials, selling them right from his website. And now, he's back to selling out those same arenas. Louis' scandal was about his shocking personal behavior. But what happens when a beloved TV mom sends one single, terrible tweet that ends her own show? 3. Roseanne Barr. In 2018, Roseanne Barr was on top of the world. Again, her classic 90s sitcom Roseanne had just been rebooted, and it was a monster hit. Believe it or not, it was the #1 most-watched show on television, pulling in over 18 million viewers for its first episode. She was the queen of TV, and her network, ABC, was thrilled. But Roseanne had a long history of posting wild and offensive things online. One night, she sent out a tweet about a former government official named Valerie Jarrett, who is a black woman. The tweet was racist. There's no other way to put it. When the sun came up, the world had seen the tweet, and the reaction was a firestorm. Her co-stars condemned her. The show's writers were in shock. By lunchtime, ABC had made a stunning decision. They canceled her show, just like that. The #1 show on TV was gone. It was a massive, multi-million-dollar decision made in just a few hours. Her career was over. ABC later rebooted the reboot, calling it The Conners. They wrote her character off the show by saying she had passed away. It was a brutal and swift end to a TV legend. Roseanne lost her own hit show, but our next comedian lost a gig he hadn't even started yet, and it was the biggest gig in the entire world. 4. Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is, without a doubt, one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. He sells out football stadiums for his comedy shows. He's in hit movie after hit movie. In 2018, he got the call that every comedian dreams of. He was asked to host the Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars. It was the peak of his career. But as soon as the announcement was made, people started digging. They went back through his old tweets, and they found a lot of them, mostly from around 2009 to 2011, that contained anti-gay comments and slurs. It was a really bad look. The Academy, the group that runs the Oscars, got nervous. They gave Kevin an ultimatum. They told him to apologize for the old tweets, or he would be fired from the job. At first, Kevin refused. He went on social media and said he had already apologized for those jokes in the past and he was not going to do it again. He said it was a no-win situation. A few hours later, he had a change of heart. He stepped down from the hosting job and issued an apology. The Oscars ended up having no host that year. For a moment, it looked like Kevin Hart's perfect career had hit a major wall. But the thing is, he was just too big to fail. He bounced back, and his career barely even slowed down. Kevin's old tweets came from the U.S., but this next comedian's tweets caused an international incident in the U.K. and cost him his entire tour. 5. Andrew Lawrence. Over in the United Kingdom. Andrew Lawrence was a familiar face on the comedy scene. He was known for his grumpy, red-headed character and had been on a lot of popular TV panel shows. He was a solid, working comedian with a national tour. Then came the 2021 Euro Soccer Final. England's team, which was celebrated for its diversity, lost the big game in a heartbreaking shootout. 3 of the players who missed their shots were black. After the game, these players were hit with a disgusting wave of racist online abuse. It was a national shame. Instead of defending the players, Andrew Lawrence decided to post his own awful tweets. He made racist jokes and complained about the players. The backlash was unlike anything he had ever seen. People were furious. His agent, the company that booked all his jobs, dropped him immediately. Then, one by one, every single theater and venue on his upcoming tour called and canceled his shows. In the span of about 48 hours, his entire mainstream career was wiped off the map. He had nowhere to perform. He tried to apologize, but no one was buying it. He has since pivoted, becoming a comedian who posts videos online for a new right-wing audience. Lawrence was a stand-up comedian, but this next guy was a celebrated writer for some of the biggest UK hit shows until he picked a fight he couldn't win. 6. Gray Umlinahan. If you've ever watched British comedy, you've seen the work of Gray Umlinahan. He was a genius. He co-created Father Ted and the IT Crowd, 2 of the most beloved sitcoms of all time. He was a wealthy, respected, and award-winning writer, but in the late 2010s, he became very, very vocal online about one specific topic: his views on trans people. He became one of the most prominent voices in a very heated debate. He posted constantly, getting into fights with activists, other writers, and even the actors from his own shows. His opinions were seen as deeply transphobic by many, and he quickly became a super problematic figure. The thing nobody tells you is that it doesn't matter how successful you are. If you become that toxic, people will stop working with you. A musical he had written based on Father Ted was stalled and then canceled. He says he has been effectively blacklisted from the TV industry. Even actors he helped make famous have publicly spoken out against him. He claims he lost everything because he spoke his mind. His comedy writing career is completely gone, and he is now a full-time activist for his cause. Linehan's career ended over his strong opinions. But this next UK comic's career almost ended because of the offensive character he created. 7. Dapper Laughs. In 2014, a comedian named Daniel O'Reilly, better known as Dapper Laughs, was a huge star in the UK. He got his start on social media, making short videos. His character, Dapper Laughs, was a loudmouthed lad who was always talking about women in a really crude way. He got so popular that a TV network, ITV, gave him his own show called Dapper Laughs, On the Pull. But the public was starting to turn on him. His humor was criticized as being really misogynistic or woman-hating. A big petition with over 60,000 signatures was started to get his show taken off the air. Then a video from one of his old stand-up shows surfaced. In it, he made a joke about a female audience member that was seen as truly awful and beyond the pale. That was the final straw. ITV canceled his show. The BBC, where he was supposed to appear, dropped him. His entire national tour was canceled. His career was in flames. It got so bad that he went on a serious news program, BC Newsnight, and gave a tearful interview. He announced that the Dapper Laughs character was dead. He said it was all a big mistake. But it was a temporary cancellation. After laying low for a while, he slowly brought the character back and is now a working comedian again. Dapper Laughs had to cry on TV to save himself. But our next comedian's apology tour became almost as famous as the horrible rant that ended his career. 8. Michael Richards. In the 1990s, Michael Richards was on top of the world. He played Cosmo Kramer on Seinfeld, one of the most popular TV shows in history. He won 3 Emmy Awards for the role. He was a comedy legend, beloved by millions for his wild physical comedy and crazy hair. After Seinfeld ended, he mostly stayed out of the spotlight. Then, in 2006, he decided to try his hand at stand-up comedy. He was performing at a famous club in Los Angeles called The Laugh Factory. During his set, a group of black audience members started heckling him. Michael Richards completely lost his mind. He went on a shocking, hate-filled rant. He began screaming the N-word at them, over and over. He was filled with a rage that no one had ever seen from him. What he didn't know was that someone in the audience was filming the whole thing on their, at the time, very basic cell phone camera. The video went viral. It was one of the first ever cancellations of the digital age. His career was over, instantly. He went on The Late Show with David Letterman, with Jerry Seinfeld by his side, to make a bizarre and awkward public apology. But it didn't work. He vanished from public life for almost a decade. Richards's rant was a sudden explosion of anger. But our next 2 comics are getting in trouble right now for jokes they wrote into their multi-million-dollar specials. 9. Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais loves to be on the edge. He created the original UK version of The Office. He's famous for hosting the Golden Globes and insulting every single star in the room. His whole brand is about saying the unsayable. For his recent string of stand-up specials on Netflix, he decided to aim his jokes at the trans community. In his specials, like Humanity and Supernature, he made a lot of jokes that many people found to be deeply offensive and transphobic. The backlash was huge. Major media outlets wrote articles condemning the jokes. Activist groups called for Netflix to take the specials down. There were huge protests online. But here's the thing that's different. Netflix paid Ricky Gervais a reported $40 million for those specials, and they did not back down. They refused to pull the content. And Ricky, he just got more popular. His tours sell out stadiums. He seems to be completely uncancelable. The more people complain, the more his fans seem to love him for not caring. Ricky's specials caused massive online protests. But this next comedian had his own co-workers at Netflix stage a walkout in protest of his show. 10. Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is considered by many to be a comedy genius. His program, Chappelle's Show, is a cultural landmark. After walking away from that show, he made a massive comeback with a series of huge Netflix specials. But like Ricky Gervais, he also decided to focus a lot of his new material on the trans community. His jokes got more and more critical, culminating in his 2021 special, The Closer. In it, he made a series of statements that many felt were not just jokes, but were actively harmful. This time, the protest came from inside Netflix. A group of trans employees at the company staged a public walkout. They demanded the special be removed, saying it was hate speech. The media firestorm was massive. It was a huge test for Netflix. And just like with Gervais, Netflix did not budge. They stood by Chappelle. His career, if anything, has gotten even bigger. He still sells out arenas all over the world. But the controversy has changed how many people see him. It even led to a shocking moment when a man tackled him on stage at the Hollywood Bowl. Chappelle's jokes were from 2021, but this next comic got in trouble for a sketch she did all the way back in 2007. 11. Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman built her whole career on being shocking. Her comedy persona was that of a sweet, innocent-looking woman who would say the most offensive things you could imagine. For a long time, it worked, and she became a huge star with her own show on Comedy Central. On one episode of that show, back in 2007, she decided to do a sketch about racism. To make her point, she put on blackface. At the time, it barely caused a ripple. But the thing about the internet is, nothing ever disappears. Years later, in the new, woke cultural climate, that clip resurfaced. And people were horrified. What was seen as edgy in 2007 was now seen as just plain racist. Sarah Silverman, who is known for being very liberal, was suddenly in the hot seat. She apologized for the sketch, saying she was horrified by it now. But the damage was done. Believe it or not, she revealed in an interview that she was fired from a movie role the night before filming, all because a producer saw that old blackface clip. Her career wasn't canceled, but it showed how fast an old joke can come back to bite you. Sarah got in trouble for a visual gag that aged badly. This next comic got his entire show pulled by the venue just for the offensive words he used. 12. Jerry Sadowitz. In Scotland, Jerry Sadowitz is a legend. He's a cult figure known for being a mix of a magician and a comedian. But his comedy is not for the faint of heart. It is famously dark, offensive, and designed to shock. In 2022, he was booked to perform at a major venue during the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, one of the biggest arts festivals in the world. He got on stage and did his show, and it was apparently so offensive that the venue itself decided to cancel his second and final performance. Here's the wow factor. The venue released a statement saying they support free speech, but that Sadowitz's show contained extreme content that was not acceptable. They said they had to protect their own staff from the kind of hate-filled material he was spouting. Reports said he used slurs and even exposed his private parts. Sadowitz was furious, saying he was just doing his act, but his fans loved it. The cancellation just made him more infamous and proved to his followers that he was the most dangerous comic in the business. Sadowitz is a cult hero, but our next comic was a national treasure in his country until his comments got him in hot water. 13. Barry Humphries. For over 60 years, Barry Humphries was one of Australia's most beloved entertainers. The world knew him better as his most famous character, the purple-haired, cat-eyed, sharp-tongued Dame Edna Everage. He was a global superstar and a national icon, but in his later years he made a series of public comments that caused a huge controversy. Like Gervais and Chappelle, he made comments about trans people, calling it a fashion, and making other remarks that were seen as deeply transphobic. The backlash in his home country was severe. The Melbourne International Comedy Festival, a massive event that Barry Humphries himself helped to create decades earlier, made a huge decision. They had an award named after him called the Barry Award, which was the festival's top prize. In 2019, they announced they were removing his name from the award. It was a massive public shaming. Imagine the Oscars deciding to rename the Oscar statue. It was that big of a deal. He passed away in 2023, but for many, this controversy left a sad cloud over his final years. Barry was a legend at the end of his career. This next comedian was just starting his when thousands of people tried to cancel him. 14. Nabil Abdul Rashid. Nabil Abdul Rashid was a stand-up comedian in the UK who got his big break on the show Britain's Got Talent. He made it all the way to the live final, which is watched by millions of people. For his final set, he decided to do something brave. He didn't just tell silly jokes. He performed a set that was all about race, politics, and his experience as a black Muslim in Britain. It was powerful and funny, but it also made some people very uncomfortable. Immediately after the show, the complaints started flooding in. Ofcom, the UK's TV watchdog, received over 2,000 complaints from viewers who were furious. They called his act racist against white people and political. The media jumped on the story, and there was a huge movement to cancel him. But then something amazing happened. Ofcom finished its investigation and cleared him. They ruled that his jokes were a valid and important part of a discussion about race. The attempt to cancel him backfired. It made him a household name, and he now tours the world. Nabil's jokes were cleared by the government, but this next comic used a word so bad it still follows him, even though he's a comedian's comedian. 15. Daniel Kitson. Daniel Kitson is not a comedian you'll see on TV. He's a cult figure in the UK, a comedian's comedian who is worshipped by other comics for his brilliant, artistic, and story-based shows. He sells out his shows just by word of mouth. Because he's not mainstream, he operates by his own rules, but in one of his shows, he used a word that crossed a major line. He used the P word, which is a horrible and racist slur for people of Pakistani descent. This caused a huge debate within the comedy world. His fans and some other comics tried to defend him, saying it was in character or part of a larger point. But many others were disgusted. They said there was no excuse ever to use a word like that. Because Kitson is not a mainstream star, he didn't get canceled by a network. He has no agent to fire him. But the incident became a huge stain on his reputation. It showed that even a beloved pure artist can't hide from the consequences of his words. Kitson is a cult comic. Our next guy is a massive podcast star who almost got derailed by his own strange feuds. 16. Theo Von has one of the most unique voices in comedy. With his cringe style and wild, rambling stories, he has built a podcast empire with his show This Past Weekend. He's a huge star, selling out theaters across America. But his near cancellation didn't come from a single joke. It came from a messy, public feud with another comedian and podcaster, Brendan Schaub. Theo was a regular on Schaub's show, but then he left to focus on his own. Things got very messy. Fans of Schaub and even some other comedians turned on Theo. They accused him of being a bad friend and a snake. There was a big online movement to try and cancel him. On top of that, his unique style of humor is often so on the edge that people are constantly trying to paint him as a bad guy. But here's the kicker. It completely failed. Every attempt to take him down has only seemed to make his fans, the Rat King Army, more loyal. His podcast is now one of the biggest in the world, and he's more popular than ever. Theo's cancellation came from other podcasters, but what happens when a movie star slaps a comedian on live TV? 17. Will Smith. This is a weird one because the comedian was the victim. In 2022, Chris Rock was on stage at the Oscars, doing what he does, telling jokes. He made a pretty mild joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, and her shaved head. What happened next, everyone has seen. Will Smith walked on stage in front of hundreds of millions of people and slapped Chris Rock hard across the face. Then he went back to his seat and screamed profanities at him. It was one of the most shocking moments in TV history. The person who got canceled was Will Smith. He was banned from the Oscars for 10 years, and his big-budget movies were all put on hold. But the incident had a strange effect on Chris Rock, too. For a while, people were afraid to go to his shows, worried that hecklers would disrupt them. But then the opposite happened. Ticket sales for his comedy tour exploded. One report said sales went up by 1,500%. He eventually responded with his own Netflix special, Selective Outrage, which was a massive hit. He turned the slap into a huge payday. Will Smith's stunt was shockingly real. This next comic's stunt was completely fake, but the backlash was 100% real. 18. Joe Lycett. Joe Lycett is a British comedian known for his elaborate pranks. He's an activist comedian who pulls stunts to make a point about big corporations or politicians. But in 2021, he went too far for some people. He faked a report that a major UK bank was in big trouble. He created fake news articles and a fake statement from the head of the bank, all as part of a TV show. The problem was, some people thought it was real. For a few hours, there was a genuine panic. People were furious. They said his joke could have caused people to pull their life savings out of the bank. They said he could have started a real financial panic. His TV show was threatened, and there were calls for him to be canceled for being so irresponsible. He had to issue a fast apology and explain the prank. But he survived. He has leaned into his role as a prankster for the people, and he's more popular than ever. Joe's stunt was a prank, but this next comedian's entire life story, the one that made him famous, turned out to be a giant lie. 19. Stephen Rannazzisi. In the 2010s, Stephen Rannazzisi was a successful comedian and actor. He was best known for playing the character Kevin on the hit FX sitcom The League. He was a funny, relatable guy. And he had an incredible backstory. His story, which he told in many interviews, was that he was working as an office worker for Merrill Lynch on the 54th floor of the World Trade Center's South Tower on September 11, 2001. He said he felt the other tower get hit, and he fled just in time, escaping with his life. He said this near-death experience is what pushed him to move to L.A. and become a comedian. What a story. Except it was a total lie. In 2015, the New York Times exposed him. He was never in the World Trade Center. He wasn't even in New York City that day. He had been working in a different office miles away. He had lied about a national tragedy for 14 years to build his career. The backlash was crushing. He was shamed everywhere. He lost a big commercial deal. The league was already ending, but his career was stalled. He still tours, but he'll forever be known as that guy who lied about 9/11. Stephen lied about a national tragedy. But what happens when a beloved, trusted TV host is accused of being a bigot because of his own jokes? 20. Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart is, for many people, a liberal icon. For over 15 years, he hosted The Daily Show, a program that changed news and comedy forever. He was seen as a trusted, smart, and progressive voice. After he retired from the show, he made a guest appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He decided to do a comedy bit about the origins of the global pandemic. He went on a long, funny rant about how it was obvious, in his opinion, that it came from a lab in Wuhan. Well, the thing nobody tells you is that at the time, this lab leak idea was considered a conspiracy theory and was seen by many in the media as a racist and problematic thing to say. The next day, Jon Stewart was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Media outlets and progressive activists, his own fans, turned on him. They called his jokes bigoted and harmful. It was one of the first times a progressive icon was facing cancellation from his own side. But Jon Stewart is Jon Stewart. He brushed it off, stuck to his guns, and now has a new show on Apple TV+. He survived.